Jen is the epitome of CLA. She's compassionate, she's learned, and she's awesome. That's all you need to know.
Thank you, Tim.
So, Jen, without further ado, please, the floor is yours.
Wow, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Jay. And thank you, team, for joining us here in person and in Zoom. This is my first, what are we going to call this, a hybrid meeting? Hybrid conference? This is innovative. Isn't it good to be here? For those that are physically here in person, isn't it good to be together? And for those of you that are joining us online, I hope you have a great experience as well. I want to make sure that this is interactive. And don't you love when presenters come up and they say, we want this to be interactive? You're like, oh, here we go. Yes, everybody says that, right? But how are we going to actually pull that off? Well, as Jay had said, I've built some content that I hope you find helpful, talking about how culture can really drive results. Because in our roles of finance leaders, that's what we do, right? We monitor the results. We make sure we drive results. And so this is, I hope, a session where you can take a couple nuggets from it. But what I really love is to be able to capture the ideas that you have, or maybe what's going on in your organizations, so we could dialogue about it a little bit. So we are going to have some polling questions, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Does this sound okay? Okay. All right, great. So let's get started here. So culture. Anybody feel like this lady here working remotely? She's in the fridge, right? We have these boundaries that we're trying to manage between our work life and our home life. And all of that comes together in very unique ways, especially since 2020 was a year unlike any other. We dealt with the pandemic. We dealt with what I refer to as the outside coming in, because we had to have so many different working relationships. And all of that, for better or for worse, that impacts your culture. And so it's something really important that we need to know. In addition, as finance leaders, as leaders of teams, whatever you do in your day-to-day, we think a lot about strategy. Sometimes we think a little bit too much about ops. We wish we had more time for strategy. But either way, even with the best laid plans, and I've been through a number of different teams, I've worked across the country, I've worked outside of the United States, and I've found time after time that when you invest in people and you really focus on culture, you can do amazing things. You can drive results. And honestly, I believe in my heart that this is true, that culture eats strategy. I don't even know, there was a book out there once, wasn't it? It was like, eat strategy for lunch or dinner. I said, I don't care. I think it's all of the above, because it's so very important. But it's also one of the most underinvested items that we have in our businesses. And it's complex. I don't know if you felt this, but in 2020 and even in 21, we're moving toward this year of recovery. We're seeing more people in person. But still, this volatility that we're feeling in our day-to-day, it's impacting our people, and therefore it's impacting our culture. I'll give you a couple of examples. And all the hard decisions that you had to make in 2020, no doubt, will probably resonate in your mind. But there was a lot of economic impact to the pandemic. Very obvious, right? That may not have impacted your employees specifically, but perhaps their spouse or their neighbor. And so they felt that energy on them, and they see what's going on in the country. Same thing with social, how things are acting within our own environments, our communities, what's going on, and how is that exemplified on the news? It impacts our culture. Oh, sorry, Michelle. That's okay. The show must go on, even with the dress rehearsal. And then, of course, politics. No one worries about that, right? There's no conversation about that ever. But still, those are the types of things that impact our people and then therefore impact our culture. And so you may wonder, how do you even know what type of a culture that you have? Is it a good culture, a bad culture? Are there things that are within your teams that are maybe ugly at times? And I'll tell you, there's all different ways that you can determine this, and there's lots of great resources. I'm going to share a couple with you as I go along, but I'm going to talk a little bit about research from Gallup. If you've heard of the Gallup organization, they've done a lot of wonderful research, a lot of which is free. And they have 12 questions that you can use completely anonymously. It's on their website right now to test the engagement of your culture, and you can make your own assessment. There's one thing that I hope that you leave with is the empowerment to really lean into your culture and see how engaged your teams are, because we've been through so much. It may have changed from where it was maybe in 2019 to where we are here in 2021. But let's lean in a little bit and see what kind of cultures that we have been experiencing within our own companies. And how about for the people here? Is there a way to poll for the people in person? Okay, we have to get creative here then, don't we? Okay, so here's the question. I believe that culture is critical to impacting results, and when I mean results, financial results or process results. It's helpful or it's unlikely. This is also my way to see how hard I need to work right here. Because if I get a lot of unlikely, I'm really gonna need to bring my A game here. But what do we think? Maybe in person we can, A, okay? A. Oh, wow. Man, I'm in the right room with a lot of believers. Michelle, you'll have to tell me what we get.
Okay, I'll share where about 90% of people have voted. So if you can give them like maybe 10 seconds.
Oh, absolutely.
10 seconds, and then I'll end it and share.
That's great. It's so interesting. I think that if I would have asked this question perhaps 5 years ago, we may have given a different answer. I hear some people say, well, it's kind of a soft thing. Not really something I want to invest in, but I love that you said that, Bill, just so powerfully. No, it's not soft. It's important, right? It's actually critical.
Priceless.
It's priceless. I know. I'm glad we're recording this. I need that kind of feedback here. I absolutely agree. And it's a difference maker. And you've seen it if you've played sports, if you've been involved with a musical act, whatever it is. The culture of a team, of a community, will absolutely impact the results. Are they tied to it? Are they passionate? So Michelle, what did our guests remotely say?
92% said critical to impact results, 8% helpful,
Okay.
and 0% unlikely.
All right. All right. Well, we got a group of believers here. This is great. Okay, so same question. So I asked you about yourself personally, but now think about the teams that you lead. How would they answer that exact same question? A, B, I feel like we're doing the YMCA here, Jay. Is that what we're doing? Do you feel the same? Do you feel they would say A? Where would they be? B. Probably B. What do you think here, back row? Abstaining from vote? A? Okay. We'll wait to see what comes up from here. It's amazing how, as a leader, and you're all leaders in your own individual teams, obviously, your impact, your belief, the fact that so many of you said it was critical is huge. That impacts your team. And largely, many of the times, people will absolutely believe it's helpful. They may not hear your passion as much, that it's critical, but at least they won't think that it's not connected. And this is a really important thing just to set the baseline here. You're doing great, Michelle. She's like running the show back there.
50-50 split. So 50% said it was critical, and 49% helpful, and 0% unlikely.
Okay. Again, great feedback. So the point of me even asking that is to see where we are within our own organization. So the good news is that we understand how important it is, and even as Bill had said, that it's critical. But I was sitting at a conference. It was actually NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors, in Washington, D.C. a couple years ago. And the CEO of Gallup was speaking, and he was speaking about engagement. And they do great surveys. And he was talking about the most recent survey. And he was talking about how the lack of engagement within our workforces worldwide, but then he was more specific about the US, is at record lows. It was unbelievable. And I sat in that audience, there was like 1,000 people, and I just started thinking about CLA, and I said, there's no way. There's no way that's us, right? You always kind of have a state of denial, not me, right? But based on research, here's a couple things that he was sharing that the team had found. If you were to ask your team, if you were to ask your employees, about 1 in 3 would say they have a good job. Do you think that resonates? Do you agree? Or do you think that sounds low? I hope it's low too. But this is what the research is showing us. And this is the one that really got me. So again, this is worldwide, but only 15% of employees are engaged in their job. Now let me pause here for a second and talk about the definition of engagement, because engagement sometimes is confused with happy, right? So I'm gonna put some ping pong tables in and I'm gonna give free sodas and snacks and all my employees should be engaged. Well, we all know that that's a thought of the past. That does not work. And you can define engagement in many different ways, but I will tell you the way we describe it, the way we've seen is really just, is the person really dialed in? Do they believe what you believe? And culture is largely an aggregation of beliefs, behaviors, and values. And so if those are all connected and your teams are dialed in and they understand it, largely they will be engaged. But this number is frighteningly low, in my opinion. It's unbelievable. But that said, and that's the converse, it's better in the United States. So the 15%. So for those of you that are dealing with multi-location, anybody outside the US, international operations, struggling sometimes with teams, that could be a reason why, but in the United States, it's actually better, which is good. But still, even if only 3 out of every 10 of your employees are engaged, that's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. We see, I know this slide is a little bit tough for everybody, and so I'll just basically tell you the gist of it. We have seen so many times how the power of teams can drive results, and those are financial results. So the highest performing teams in the country absolutely have seen the financial impact to the P&L. They've seen it in terms of sales, growth. You know, how do you manage your time and what are you going to put your time into? Largely, it's going to be things that are going to move the organization forward if you are engaged. And then on the other side, so I know we have some people who are leading manufacturing plants, et cetera. So it could impact safety, all those different things. It could impact employee morale if we have engaged teams. So a lot on the why. But if teams aren't engaged, you have to ask why. And one of the biggest drivers that we have found is a lack of appreciation. And I don't know about you, but as finance leaders, it's sometimes a thankless job. Right? We're sometimes the unsung heroes, I believe, right? We're the ones that have to say no a lot. We're the ones that have to manage the budget. There's a lot of difficulty in the role of a finance leader. I get that. But then within the teams themselves, people aren't feeling that they're being recognized for the day-to-day greatness that they have. And so there are little ways that you can fix this on a very regular basis. People aren't asking for much. And they would actually be more engaged and work harder for the organization if they were appreciated. And this can go into your personal life as well, right? We realize that people are there for us all the time, and so we sort of take it for granted. And so we have to really lean into feeling appreciated. And at CLA, we've listened to our people quite often, and that is something that we need to continue to work on. It's not like you can send one email, one thank you email, one acknowledgement. You have to do it again and again and again. It's really, really important. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, COVID has just made this a big challenge for us. And so if you think about the engagement of your teams, the culture in your organizations, since COVID hit, has it gotten better? And sometimes it has. Some people look at me and say, that's crazy. How could it ever get better? I can give you a couple stories of how it has gotten better. And if you have them, we should share that. Has it become worse? The disconnectivity, a lot of times people working remotely, there's a lot of exhaustion in that. Or has it kind of stayed the same? Where are you in that? Anybody here think it's improved? Do you have a story of how your culture and engagement has improved? You have one.
I think because we're a manufacturer, we've worked through this whole thing, and we felt culture as a team because, you know, some people are getting laid off here across the country and everything else.
Yeah.
And it just has made our team be more cohesive. And yes, we have 300 plus employees, and we've had about 20 total cases of employees that have had COVID, you know.
Yes.
So I think people really, they first didn't like it, having to, be at work, not work from home.
Yeah.
But then they understood that we need everybody there. Our manufacturing can't be. So I think improved our engagement.
That's great. That's great. And how we handled 2020, and we had to make a lot of tough decisions in 2020, didn't we? And it was sort of what side of wrong do you sometimes feel like you need to be on? It was just very, very difficult. But your employees watch that. So culture, again, so behaviors, beliefs, and values. You can say anything you want about your culture, but how you respond in the time of crisis, that's what they're going to remember. And what's amazing about your story, because we had a similar experience within CLA, so we did not have to do layoffs, furloughs, et cetera. But we did have challenges, cost containment, restrictions. It was really hard. But what came back to us is that our new hires heard how we handled 2020, and that impacted them. They weren't even here. And so the impact of our behaviors will last likely. So I think that's a great story. Okay, so we have at least one who's improved. Anything from the remote team?
Yes, 10% said improved, 43% said it had become worse, and 47% said it had stayed the same.
Okay. So not surprising. Does that kind of resonate with the team here? So pretty much stayed the same or become worse. And just in terms of reasons why it became worse, if we could have some comments in the chat, I think it would be helpful to hear. I hear a lot about connectivity. So we're not seeing each other, and sometimes that's because we can't. Sometimes it's because we like working remotely, but we're not having that social connectivity, so it's a challenge. Anyone else want to share? Why has it become worse? Anything else the team can learn about? What do you have?
Communication was a struggle to begin with the organization, and it just got worse. So communication was kind of poor beforehand, and it took a major nosedive when people went remote.
Tell us a little bit about like the size of organization you have and what communication you had and what do you think you needed?
Well, we were implementing a computer system or an ERP system at the time. We're still implementing, so we needed a lot of communication, and we didn't have the right people basically around the table when we were working on things, and basically getting lost in the shuffle, not realizing who's on the call and who isn't on the call, and who should be, things like that. So, I mean, we have 250 employees, so it was a struggle. It still is a little struggle because many of them are still home.
Yes. Communication is one of the top. If you ever have the opportunity to bring in someone to talk about like sort of tricks with communication, how to do it, especially as you continue to grow, I think it would be worth everyone's time. Interestingly enough, your direct manager, so the person that you report to directly and however you look at your organization, has the most impact on your engagement, and that is the person that will be really the leader in communication. And that's where a lot of companies fall. I know that CLA, we've been struggling with this as well. You think that the communication needs to come from a body, a person, a role, a national team, a director, but truly that's where the direction needs to come, but it's how do you conversate on the day-to-day? So can you equip your managers with what this really means? That will be key. So thank you for sharing that. That's important. And this probably won't surprise you either, but our teams are feeling exhausted. And there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, we have a lot of people within our organizations that have young children. And I don't know as much about what is going on within Green Bay with the school systems. Are we coming back? Do we have kids in school a couple days a week, largely? Or was it still kind of growing into that? A little bit? Yeah, a little bit here and there? Yeah. And that has become, obviously after a year, that's become a really big drain on our people, especially for those that have elementary school kids. And so our teams are exhausted. And then back to the lady in the fridge, right? I mean, we have these lack of boundaries when we're working remotely. And so we don't know how to turn it off and on. And so that leads to exhaustion. Sometimes it's so interesting kind of how we are as people. We love routines, normally. Especially those that have chosen finance. We like the idea of routines. We like things that are predictable. And so when we don't have that opportunity to have that routine, it will physically exhaust us. We've actually done some studies. I love talking about emotional intelligence and just kind of how we show up as leaders and what that means. But for a lot of people, change, just being around change of any kind, can cause physical and emotional stress. It's an amazing thing. It makes people very tired. And so we're dealing with that in a lot of parts of the country. And if you're dealing with that as well, we would understand. Now, there's some tips that we can do to try to help, but that is something that no doubt is within our workforce. So we've kind of laid the framework here, but you came to get results. You came to hear how culture can actually drive results. So I doubt that anything that I shared with you really surprised you. I don't know about you in terms of the engagement. I hope those numbers are very low and your engagement is much higher. But I will share a little bit about the CLA story and tell you a little bit about where we adopted some things that really, really worked as we've been on our growth trajectory. And then I'll also tell you where we messed up. And I will be very honest because I hope you can learn from those. I know we learn from those as well. But I always think of things in terms of three. And this is pretty simple but not easy in the fact that the first thing that you need to do is to define your culture. And that's hard. That's squishy. Define your culture, define your purpose, and I would also say define your values. And it's okay to do that in sort of an aspirational way. The way we did it at CLA was we just started asking questions, asking people why they work there and having some of those conversations. But you really need to take pen to paper and to start to define what it is that you want to build. And in addition, if it's aspirational, that's okay. You have to engage your team, so we're going to talk about that, the keys to engagement and some of the ideas that we can share here today, as well as create an inspiration loop. That sounds sort of like an amusement park, right? But you probably get the idea is that after we lay this framework and after we engage our teams, our work's not done. This culture is something we have to constantly cultivate over and over and over again. So here's a little bit about how we did this at CLA. And we've been in existence for over 100 years with our various, I call them lifelines that we've had across the country. But truly our CLA brand began only in 2012. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how cultures come together. And in 2012, we had a great opportunity and also a great challenge to bring two like-sized firms together. And that was Clifton Gunderson and Larson-Allen. And they were about the same size, they had the same infrastructure, the same leadership teams, but there was a real why to bring these organizations together. And the leaders that created that opportunity, they were very articulate in what that was, and ultimately were able to pull that off, which was great. But it took a long time to integrate, truly. It took about 5 years, and I can do all kinds of different sessions on that and, sort of mergers of equals and how that works and how that doesn't work and some of the challenges that we had. But every single time we have an acquisition opportunity, we ask a firm to join us, it always starts with culture, and you have to define that culture. Why is 1 + 1 3, 4, or 5? And that's a really difficult thing to do, but we've also seen where it hasn't gone so well. So we had to put that down to paper, we had to understand what we were building in terms of a brand, and we had to communicate that out. But maybe unlike some of you, we way overcomplicated it. There was a, 17-page document that talked about our strategic advantages and our CLA promise, and it was beautiful, and it took hours and hours, and there's all these great graphics. Guess how many people actually read it? Very few. You're probably bored that I'm even talking about it at this point, right? Yeah, and because we put so much energy and we care so much about it, but we use way too many words and we're not being very clear. So it wasn't until 2015 that we just said, we have to simplify this. What are we trying to do for the market? And ultimately, the CLA promise is to know you and to help you. And it's very simple. We took 17 pages and we got it down to that. Because that way we could explain it and we could talk a little bit more about our philosophy and our values and really simplify it. The other thing that we did is we knew we wanted to be a big part of the communities that we serve, so we created a foundation. We talk a lot about delivering service through service in our communities. When we moved into 2018, we defined our purpose. And I would love to know, just maybe show of hands of those in the room, how many people have defined the purpose of their organization? Have you gone through that process? What are you in business for? What is that? Would you mind sharing it?
Yeah, we're manufacturer of medical devices.
Okay.
Jen, sorry to interrupt. Can you repeat for the virtual audience, because they can't hear even with a microphone because they're on a separate audio feed?
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're interested in what the in-person audience is saying.
Yes.
What the feedback is.
Okay, so the question was, what's the purpose of the company? And you were about to share.
The purpose of Tidy is to support caregivers and protect patients.
Okay, the purpose of Tiding is to support caregivers
Protect patients.
and protect patients. Okay, that's powerful and that's simple. How long did it take you, the team, your organization to create that?
Easily 10 years.
10 years. Oh my gosh. And different iterations of it too, right?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, I would love to hear more about that story. Anybody else have the purpose defined in the company? I bet we have some folks online. So our purpose is to create opportunities. And again, we tried to over-engineer it, and I happened to be in the room when we finally zoned in on it, so I would love to sort of know how that happened. But we ended up soliciting information from our team, from our clients, from our communities, and really tried to understand, why do people want to work with us? Why do people want to be a part of our CLA family? And ultimately collated all that information and came down to create opportunities. But even that, we wanted to overcomplicate. We're like, create opportunities for who? For our clients and our people and our communities. And I remember our CEO at the time, Denny Schlepper, he said, that's it. It's just create opportunities. Keep it simple. And that was the best advice we could have gotten because, again, we tend to overcomplicate it. To have a purpose that truly matches what you're trying to drive within the organization and people can remember it, that's key. That's key, because sometimes you go into businesses, and if this is your organization, it's not bad. It's just hard to remember. You have mission statements up there, and they have a lot of the words that we tend to see, like integrity and trust and client deliverables and customer service, but it's hard to remember when you walk away from that plaque what it actually says. So keeping it really simple, but really defining what that purpose is. The other thing in 2018 that we needed to do was really start working more as a full organization. And so if you have multiple locations or if you have 250 people, a lot of times you start to see these groups connect. And so you have teams that aren't connecting with teams. And so we moved forward with our culture and we said, we have to be one firm. We just have to be one team. And we've really, really worked on that from a messaging standpoint, but more importantly for how we ran the business. That was a big move for us. But then we took another leap in 2019, and the one firm for our teams felt very corporate, felt very boxy. And they said, the reason I stay here, and I had the opportunity to spend time in our Green Bay office and our Sheboygan office, and I met folks that have been with us for 30 and even 40 years. And I ask them the same question every time. What's kept you here so long? It's the clients, it's the people, it's the variety, and it's the feel I have when I come in. And so this idea of family has been something that's been permeating within CLA for a long time, and we're very passionate about it, but we mean it more in terms of community. We know you have a nuclear family, we appreciate that, but we want you to feel like we've got your back. So whether you're a client, whether you're a person, that's really, really important to us. So that was the first step that we really took in defining our culture. And then most recently, we defined the values that are important to us. And again, I know there's a lot on this slide. I just wanted to show you a picture of how this all connects. But as you think about what's important to your organization, what's the purpose, what's the culture, and then the baseline, you see those at the bottom, they're the values. And the values are really important to think through and to keep them current. So what's important to your company, what's important to your teams, and this will evolve over time. And there's some really creative examples out there. One of my favorites is Microsoft, their values. If you Google that, it's very much in a quick conversational manner, what's important to them. And these are our values, which are very important to us. And again, same way, we solicited information from our people. What do you value in terms of working with us? And then we tried to put that into words that we could have as quick articulates. Now, what's really key and where we're moving, we're not there yet, but this is how we are going to be bringing people into our organization. Sort of the lens that we look, so if we say we value curiosity, we need people who are naturally curious. If we say we value transparency, we need people who are comfortable having straight talk. And those are the types of things that we will continue to evolve to, but we are not there yet. And I will tell you, again, so one of the things that we didn't do as well as we should have, we waited too long to do this process. Because there's so much ambiguity, especially if you've grown quickly, which we have, or you've grown through bringing others in, strategic talent acquisitions. When you don't have this written down in a manner that you can clearly state and articulate and draw stories from, it's really hard for people to get that identity of what they're joining. So I wish we would have done it sooner, but shoulda, woulda, coulda there. Second step is to engage our teams. And so let's do another polling question. So people at my company are fully engaged. So remember that statistic I showed you earlier from Gallup? 15% of the workforce in the world right now is engaged, but that's not us, right? We've got much better engagement. But if you think about your teams, are they engaged 80% of the time, 50%, 15%? Where are you in that? If you think about your meetings, are people leaning in and more than half the time they're sharing their opinions, they're excited about what's going on, they're dialed in?
I think we need an A-, Jen.
Okay.
Between 50 and 80.
Too much of a gap there? Good feedback for the presentation. If we had like a 75, would we feel better about this? It's so dangerous to put percentages in front of finance leaders. Somewhere between 50 and 80%?
50.
You think you're at 50?
Yeah.
So for our folks that are engaged, we're kind of engaged half the time?
Yes, we have 68%, 50% of the time. 22%, 80% of the time,
Yes.
and 10%, 15% of the time.
Okay, whoever remotely was in that 80% of the time, can you tell me what you're doing? Because I think that is spectacular. I think we all would want to know that, right? If we can get our folks engaged 80% of the time, that means we're doing something right. That means we're pouring into them. And I love that. We have to share the stories. But one of the things that drive engagement is fun. Are you having fun at work? And talk about if you thought culture was a soft topic, you're probably going to think fun's a really soft topic. But do you enjoy the people you work with? Are you having fun? When you wake up in the morning, are you looking forward to going to work? Yes? Yeah? All right, so we're looking forward to going to work, I hope so, right? Are your meetings engaging? And so you think about the ability to really listen to your people, and they're having a great time. I mean, Jamie, this is like our meetings, right? We always, most of them. We try to have fun. We try to keep it light. And there are some things that we can do, tricks. But honestly, if people enjoy who they're working with, they feel like they have engaging work, you care about them, and it is some element of fun. It doesn't have to be like a crazy comedy house all the time, but they're having fun, they're enjoying it. That is going to drive engagement. And again, appreciation. And I know I already showed the slide, but this stat is something that I don't think that we can brush by. And the ability to appreciate someone is really, really very easy. And so I was having a conversation actually this morning with one of our team about the power of your voice and how you can impact other people. And I bet you take it for granted. I bet you don't know that if right now you sent an email to someone on your team, you would absolutely change their physiology. They will be so excited that they were recognized by you in your leadership role. So much so that people even young in their career, and sometimes they've been there a long time, they'll go and tell their parents about the recognition that they had. They're not asking for a lot. They're just asking to be seen and to be recognized. So those things, if you took 1 or 2 people today and wrote a note of acknowledgement, let them know that you appreciate them. And one step further, let them know why. What did they do specifically that you thought, wow, that was pretty lights out? Or maybe they're just an absolute reliable rock on your team and they're always there and you really, really appreciate them. You let them know that. It's pretty spectacular how they can come right back to you. The other thing that you need to think about, at least from my perspective, I would say, I need to think about, is capturing moments that are great. And so luckily Jennifer was taking pictures as we were running around Green Bay our office, because it was so much fun. It was so much fun to meet people, and you miss the happy moments sometimes. And so if you can capture some of that and share it. And we talked about our visit to Titletown Tech, actually. A bunch of us were there. I know Cordera's on the line now as a prospective member. But the vibe there is fantastic. So we're taking pictures to show that we're out in the community. We're experiencing what is going on, the incubation, the innovation here in Green Bay, and we're sharing that with other people. To the extent that we can capture these moments and share with others, what you're doing right now, this hybrid situation, this is innovative. Jay said, we're the only chapter that's doing this in the country right now, right? I think that's really amazing. That's the kind of stuff that should be celebrated. And no, all Zoom calls at CLA are not like that, where people have their hands in the air. But by God, if there's one, I'm getting the picture. And we're putting it on Yammer, and it starts to create this sort of wheel of energy and positivity. Again, we're having fun, and we're giving back to our communities, which is really, really important. It's important to our people. The other thing that's important in engagement is not just having fun. I said it's not about just happiness. It's about understanding the business. And so we utilize Power BI, and it sits on top of our financial system, and we pull dashboards probably just like you do as well. We love data. We love analyzing data, and especially our own. And our business model is pretty easy. And for those of you that have had backgrounds in public accounting, you know it's charge it, bill it, collect it. It's not hard. But what we do is we have completely open, transparent systems so everybody can know what's going on in any particular industry, in any particular office across the country, and we teach about the business. We actually had our young executive team do a video series to teach about the business, because if you understand how the business runs, then likely you can have more engagement. And ultimately, this is where I'll start talking about growth, is kind of where we've ended up. And this is a list of the top 10 firms in the country. These are all fantastic firms. I mean, there's so many great, talented firms throughout the country, and 10 of them are here. But I've circled a couple things that tie to culture driving results. One of the things that actually Jay asked me earlier was, where's your headquarters? And we don't have a headquarters. That's the second column here. And you can see all of our peer group, they all have headquarters. And yes, we have a legal address, but we specifically do not have a leadership team in one particular location that drives policy for the company. And as we've grown, we have gotten rid of that. It was actually, I think, 2015 when we really drew the line in the sand and said, no, we're not gonna have a headquarters. We're very passionate about that. And that is something that permeates in our culture, and we will continue to do that. That has led to growth for us that has been amazing. The firms we've been able to attract, the teams we've been able to attract has continued to move forward because of our emphasis on culture. The other thing that's different, and this is culture too, is our geographic reach. And so just like here in the state of Wisconsin, we have 800, I wish 800. We have 18 locations in the state of Wisconsin because we believe we need to be in the geographies we serve, in the communities that we serve. And we also believe that there are a lot of people that grew up in some really great towns in this country, and many times they want to move home after college. And we want to be able to provide a great opportunity for them. So it's a little different culture, and in terms of where we are, or where we see ourselves in the U.S., which is exciting. Ultimately, we've had some pretty record growth. So I started in 2015 because if I did 2012, it would be way too busy. But to move from 4,500 folks in 2015 across to where we are this year, which will be 7,400, and with that kind of growth, that has been pretty significant. And people ask me all the time, what's the why behind that? And I'll tell you time and time again, it's culture, culture, culture. It's culture in our offices. It's culture with how we believe that we can serve our clients. And it's culture with those organizations that we ask to join us. And I got a question about, how do you look at M&A through that culture lens? How do you see when you can find a great opportunity to fit together? And actually right here in Wisconsin, we had the opportunity to ask Schenck to join us. Schenck had been in existence for 90 years, Dan? 76, okay, thank you. So you keep me honest. And there was a lot of culture and a lot of great things that had happened within Wisconsin, and we were very impressed with that firm. We had been very impressed for years, but it wasn't until Dan and the team could meet with our team to say, can we put something together that would be additive, that would be better? And it was all based on culture. We can always figure out the financials, we can always figure out the processes, but if we can't figure out the culture, it's not going to be worth your time. And worse, it's going to go against you. It's going to be a complete time drag for you. So it was a great experience, and many more to talk about as it relates to M&A. But the thing that I'll leave you with is the challenge, if you will, however you want to see it, but to really engage people at a different level and provide these opportunities for all voices to be heard. And right now it is a little bit of a challenge. Sometimes we're fully in the office, sometimes we're hybrid, but making sure that we're hearing every voices from different generations, from different backgrounds. And my one test is sort of the meeting test. If you're in a meeting and someone hasn't said anything, are you calling them out? Are you asking their opinion? If not, you gotta ask, why are they in the meeting? I mean, even if it's for training, they have an idea, they have a question, and if you can hear them, that's gonna be really important, and that drives engagement within your cultures. And here's the last piece, so number 3. So the first one was to define the culture, the second one was to engage the teams, and the last piece is to create that inspiration loop. And there's really 2 loops here, but it's pretty easy. So the first one is for the organization itself. You have to lead from the front line. The best thing that we can do as leaders to drive an engaged culture is to talk to our people, to walk the plant floor, to get out into our locations, to spend time moving around. If we go from our car to our desk, and that is the same track that we go every day, and we only see our teams in meetings, we will miss those opportunities for greatness, for engagement. And that's, again, more challenging right now. I totally get that, but we have to lead from the front. And that's hard because it takes a lot of time. Then empower the teams. So as you lead, you show that example, then you empower those that come thereafter you, and then you can impact the entire organization. And again, that management, that direct management level will have the most impact. So you gotta have the leadership dialed in, and then the management that absolutely sees this as critical to you and to them, and then you can ultimately impact folks. But then as an individual, and this is something that maybe we don't talk enough about, I think, but we have to make sure that we are healthy. So live well, lead well, inspire others. And so how are we showing up every single day? You'd be amazed at your impact. If you're exhausted because you've been working a ton of hours and you're coming into the office and you're kind of dragging and you've got your head like this, that impacts the culture, because people look at you and say, I don't know if I can be like Bill. He works so hard, right? That might not be for me. And they may not know that Bill had something else completely outside of work that he was dealing with right now, but he brought that in and that was the vibe. Not that you did, Bill.
You're better than me.
That's right. That's great. That's great. See, and even the fact that you say that, I mean, that will empower folks. That's great. So living well individually, leading well, doing your best to show folks the way, and then obviously inspiring others. That's the loop. So making sure that we have that covered both ways. So last polling question. How often are you talking about culture? So you've said it's critical. You've said that you've actually have a decent amount of engagement, even though it's been more challenging. But are you having these kinds of conversations in your organization? Are you talking about the importance of culture at a meeting, in your coaching sessions, when you're looking at strategy? How about your boards? Are you talking about culture and the power of culture? I got a nod in the back. Couple nods, couple thumbs up. Michelle will tell us what's there. You know, it's interesting to see what's on the agendas for boards these days and what's important. And obviously it will vary by industry, but you're seeing more and more about the importance of taking care of your workforce, culture, and things that maybe we wouldn't have seen 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that is a great thing, because I think if you have that mindset, the best is yet to come. And if our boards are asking of that, of our management teams, then that will just permeate into our organizations.
And I can share with you that companies, the responses are often is 45%.
Okay.
From time to time is 41%. And hardly ever is 13%.
Okay, so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That means the conversation is going on, which is great. But as you know, this is something that we need to continue to build over time. So we shared 3 things, and I know this was pretty quick. Thank you for letting me share a little bit about the CLA story, and thank you for sharing some of the items that you had as well. But again, if we can help in any way, just defining that culture, engaging your teams, and then creating that inspiration loop, you could totally be this kid on the bike, just driving the culture and being excited about it. And I do believe that it could be a competitive advantage. And it's really hard to get talent in a lot of parts of our businesses. And so the culture, the vibe, how you treat people, that will definitely create that competitive advantage. And my hope for you is that it absolutely drives results as well. So I would love to hear from the audience if there's anything in chat or any questions that I can answer.
Michelle, do we have any questions coming across?
Not yet, but I'm working on it.
But I'm going to, wonderful, because I know our audience will honor Jen with those questions. And thank you so much, Jen, for sharing that with us. A question that I have for you, given the size, or given the rapid growth that you've experienced, how has the culture, I have to believe it has, how has the culture changed for the better as you've brought those additional firms on board?
I will tell you that it's changed for the better in terms of how we were able to add talent and change the way we thought of something. So we are not a one-size-fits-all organization where if you join us, it's our way or the highway. We absolutely have processes that we need to follow, but we listen as much as we possibly can. And so I talk about this a lot, Jay. You know, as I travel around the country, there's all these gems around the country, and we just need to find ways to get people connected. But I think the most important thing we can do is listen. And again, it's that front end, having those conversations with the leaders before you even ask these 2 organizations to join. And then finding that additive talent makes your culture stronger. but you have to work at it. It takes years to integrate.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So how do you do it in a merger and acquisition situation? Because again, I've always looked at M&A activity as a dating experience.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we often don't know we don't often know all of the quirks and nuances of our significant other until time goes by.
Sure.
How do you rapidly evaluate culture? Because I'm going to guess you don't have years to close these deals. You have a much shorter time. So tell us a little about your tips and techniques that you go through to really suss out culture, if you will.
Sure. So, it's so interesting you asked that question now, because we had 4 acquisitions that closed last year, one very, very large one, and it was actually the largest one we've done in our history amidst the pandemic, everything through Teams. And if you would have asked me 2 years ago, is that even possible to pull off? I'd say I doubt it, right? Because you have to get to know the people so much. But as with anything, we become creative in difficult situations. And so we have had the opportunity to meet with people over and over and over again. And I'll tell you, with each and every one of those opportunities for firms to join us, we brought more and more people into the conversation. So we had the ability to have leadership teams meet one-to-one, but then we brought in other teams and just got the people talking and saying, do you think you could work together? Broadening the scope to say, do we think this is even a possibility? And listening to them. And a lot of times culture in an M&A deal will be driven by what people say, but more importantly, what they did. And so if you ask a question about how did you handle 2020 in terms of the impact of the business, what types of things did you do? What types of decisions did you make? Where are you with some of that? And how did you communicate that to your people? That'll tell you what the culture is. And that to me speaks volumes. And if you can understand that from a more of a process standpoint, as well as sort of the words that they use, that will be key. I would tell you that before COVID, we spent a lot of time meeting people face-to-face, dinners, opportunities, because you just get to know people on a personal level, and that's mainly what we need to do. Can we put 2 organizations together and create something that's better? So now I'll tell you that we're doing a hybrid situation, and that will continue, and I'm excited about that because it gives us more reach from coast to coast. But with all of that, we couldn't do our job well if we didn't really understand ourselves. So that busy slide that I showed you with all the dates and kind of how we grew in our own journey, defining what our culture was, what our values were, until we really got that down in a way that we could articulate to people to show what they would be a part of, it was not as compelling of a story. So I think we had to sort of look inside first about what we could provide to others and then ask to join.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate those insights. We're in the same business of selling hours. We just sell it to a different client doing a different service, and appreciate those thoughts.
All right.
Does your culture also include differences, like in different offices with the benefits and stuff like that? Or is that part of the framework that says, okay, we're going to have the same PTO policy or the same, whatever it might be?
So back to when I was sharing sort of our philosophy of one firm, which turned into one family, we have one fully loaded comp and benefits package. And there are, depending on sort of roles and time that you spend with the organization, that will change. But yes, that is something that we look at. And interestingly, we have the opportunity to, this public accounting is such a friendly industry. Yes, we compete, but these are all great firms, and we share information, and we say, how are your employees receiving this benefit or that benefit? It's very helpful. And so we learn along the way, what is important to people, and it changes. We've actually had a study done of our benefits recently because we found that a lot of people didn't even know the benefits that we had. And so we're kind of wondering, well, why are they sitting on the shelf? What's really important to you? So we went back out and we said, tell us what is important to you. So we've learned that, yes, one benefits package for an organization like ours makes the most sense, but you have to be on it constantly and making sure that it works for the workforce that you have.
Okay, our next question is, are you seeing differences in staff working in the office versus remotely around the country? And this is a virtual question.
Yes. Are you seeing differences in the offices? Absolutely. So I was sharing some stats, and you know, we've always worked flexibly at CLA because so much of our work is done on site at our clients, and so we never had our offices fully loaded because of that flexibility and the client needs. But in terms of connectivity, we had about 20 to 22% of our employees in our offices in all of 2020. And because, probably much like you and your organizations, we were deemed essential workers, we never closed. And we're also in markets where our teams could get into the office and we don't have a lot of high rises. So back to how I was sharing, we're in 120 markets. A lot of the markets, like our Green Bay office here, you can drive right up. And it's easy, and we're well spaced, and so people feel safe. So actually, Dan, how many people, what percentage would you say our Green Bay office was filled today?
Probably 35%.
35%, yeah. And I would say that is a dial that we see moving. And certainly, again, because we're in so many different geographies, depending on the state, we see that ebb and flow. But we do see that 30%, 40% dialing up. And I do expect that by the summer, we'll be in a totally different spot. We're just starting to see the trends around the country, which is good. We're excited about that.
Bunch of mics here. Okay, multiple mics. My question is on the M&A. When you talk about the culture and the importance of it, how often, and I don't know if it's a percent, but do you pull out? I find it odd to see numbers line up perfect and have the courage or whatever it may take to so how often did you evaluate it and said, no, actually you don't fit?
Oh, yes. Great question. And honestly, we have done that way more than we've said yes. And that was because we had to look inward and say, you know, do we believe we can provide value to this group, yes or no? And so there were some things that, and this changes over time as well. Sometimes it's what we can handle. Meaning that back in 16, 17, we had a number of firms join us and the volume was quite high. We had to sit and settle. There is a way you can sort of grow yourself out of business in many ways. And so you have to really understand how you can integrate these really, really well. So we did that for a while and then we moved back out. But we look for culture straight away. We look for where we can deliver value, sort of philosophies right away. And we've set a framework. We talk about it at the board. And so a part of and I'll have a board meeting on Thursday, and we have a sort of a philosophy around acquisition activity, what types of things we look for in firms, what types of things we would address, yes or no. It starts with size and location, that's kind of the easy ones. But what are the deal breakers in terms of how we would do that? So we actually say no much more than we say yes. And that for us has been better because then we can really have a high success rate. And we look at the history of how we've done this over the years, and I can't tell you an organization that it hasn't worked out. In fact, one of the things that we hear a lot is, wow, I wish I would have done this 5 years ago. But that's because we are very methodical in how we go about looking for the fit. And it's a two-way fit. The other thing that we've done is we have a certain level of urgency around the time from which we decide that this will be a good thing. And when I say we, both firms have to decide this is a good deal. And when we actually close. Because the other thing that we found is when you have too much time that lags, too many things can go wrong. And so that sense of urgency alongside of really having good culture fits has been what's helped us.
Okay, the next virtually submitted question is, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Oh, me personally? Oh, sure. Sure. So I actually grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Anybody been to Baltimore recently? I won't say Ravens fan. I know I am in Packer territory. That is dangerous. But grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I actually went to University of Delaware. I know there's no blue hens in the room. That's really hard to do, right? Okay. So I went to University of Delaware. I started at Ernst & Young right out of college. I was one of those crazy college students that couldn't wait to get to work. I just really wanted to do it. I have this natural curiosity. E&Y gave me a shot for a winter internship, which is really, really high volume, and I just ate it up. I couldn't get enough of learning about how businesses work and working with teams. Absolutely loved my time there. They gave me an opportunity for my husband and I to move overseas, and we worked in the U.S. Capital Markets Group. I went from audit to M&A. We lived in Holland there's a lot of Dutch roots around here, which is kind of fun for me to see. Lived in Holland for just about 3 years. And I had my first daughter, Megan, came back to the US, and I stayed with Ernst & Young, and then I joined a boutique firm. And for anybody who started their own firm or started their own company, I have a huge amount of respect for them because I went from one of the largest firms in the world to one of the smallest. I remember my first day, I got a one-pager with the list of the names. I think there were 17 on there. I was like, this is it. I can get this done in 2 hours, meet everybody. But it was a great opportunity for me to see how the business runs from the inside out. But then ultimately found my way to CLA in Baltimore, then had the opportunity to move down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And truth be told, the only reason we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina was because of the weather. We loved the sunshine. My husband and I grew up in Baltimore. We wanted to raise our kids in the South. And the firm said, sure, go ahead. And that's something that I cherish a lot, and I think a lot about our own culture, making sure we give those mobility opportunities for people. But had the chance to lead the office in Charlotte, do some expansions into Raleigh and Atlanta, worked into strategy, and now I'm the CEO.
Okay, next question. Are you able to hear? I think it's not on. Okay, you can, okay. Do you think your staff will be doing more remote work on a regular basis in the next several years?
I think we all will be. I think we've learned a lot from 2020 in how we can work. I think that it's important for staff, we talk about new hires, I'll talk about especially, to be trained in a way that is really effective for them. So I'll tell you in the short term, we see things going back to that, I call it the apprenticeship model, but side by side, connecting, working in teams at that early age, and then continuing to work remotely as we always have. So we serve clients and we serve them with the right team, not just the team that's the closest driving distance. So yes, we will have a great team locally, but then if you need resources, if they're in, today was a great example, you do part of the meeting with a client that's in person, and then you're webbing in the specialists. So you don't have to have the client incur an expense, or we don't incur expense for travel, but yet you're getting that just-in-time opportunity. Conversely, for our people, I say, if you choose to build your career at CLA, you deserve all of CLA. And so if in a particular office, and we have some offices that have 7 people in them, all the way up to our largest office that has 900. And so if you choose an office that's a community-based market, or maybe even a larger metro, but they don't have necessarily the industry client base that you want to work in, we need to create the systems to get you connected around the country. So for us, remote is here to stay, but we also believe in the philosophy of building social capital in teams, in person. So it'll be a combination of the two moving forward. I would love to turn that question to you all too, though, but boy, that is something that we're all going to be challenged with moving forward.
So Jen, dynamic culture, inspired employees, creating opportunities for yourselves and for others. Tell me what CLA looks like in 5 years from now under your leadership.
It's a very insightful question. We talk a lot about the future, and actually 5 years is the horizon that we really do focus on it. And we say it's the next leg of our journey, because as the CEO, Denny Schlepper, who came before me, said, we believe our journey has no limit. There's no cap. There's nothing that we think that we can't accomplish if we have the right team. And we also don't set a target that we need to be done a certain thing by a certain date, because you can make some bad decisions. But if you look 5 years ahead, some of the things I think that you can see is that we will be more connected across the country. And so back to when you choose to build your career at CLA, you get all of CLA, we'll have teams working all over the country. We'll have inside the US mobility. I am so excited about mobility. And I'm the product of someone who had the opportunity to live in multiple cities, and I know that others of you have as well. When you experience different cultures, it changes you, it opens your mind to possibilities, things that you maybe never thought you could do. So I see us having the opportunity to do inside the US mobility. I see a huge digital transformation. It will be a challenge, but it will be exciting about what we're able to do within the market for our clients and building careers. And last but not least, I see us moving more into some other global opportunities that we have. Yeah. So I think it'll be fun.
Sounds like a great plan. I wish you the best of success.
Thank you.
I'm just happy. I'm delighted that we're a client. You help us
Likewise.
with our valuation. I'm grateful for that.
Thanks, Jay.
This is the last call for questions. I know that there are some folks from CLA that are out here. You have the ability to ask the question that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable asking in a professional setting. I see a couple of partners out here.
That's right. You should ask them.
Yeah. No. Oh, wait. We do have a bold.
I'm not a CLA. Nobody gave me a question. Obviously, a very strong culture, a very successful culture. What do you see as the biggest risks that will detract from that?
From the culture? Well, I would tell you that if we start to get any sense of big firmitis, we're in trouble. And that's part of the reason why we don't have a headquarters. Because, and if anybody has tips on this, I'll tell you, this is something I think about a lot, and our team thinks about this a lot. How do you continue to grow, but stay small, stay flat? And we're so committed to our communities. Like I said, we have offices that have 7 people, and we will not leave those markets. That's a different philosophy. At the same time, we are balancing that with the need to move to a much stronger digital platform. And so there are some things that you have to do in order to run a really well-run, secure shop. Security is a huge one. Cybersecurity is another risk to the organization, so then a risk to the culture. So I would say that we work a lot at maintaining that CLA family culture, no big firm-itis, and we fight it every step of the way. So you won't see big, thick policy manuals at CLA. We have great compliance, we have great risk profiles, but we won't overly policy and procedure anything, and we need to keep at that. Yeah, great question.
All right, Jen, thank you so much. Thanks for coming to Wisconsin and
Thanks,
sharing
pleasure.
your story with us. I wish you the best of success with a great organization.
Thank you.
And look forward to hearing more about your organization at Cocktail Hour. Unfortunately, those on video won't be able to join us, but for those of you here in the audience, I hope you have an opportunity. Let's give a big round of applause to Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.